Hi guys, it's Hot Mess Mama. It's Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday, and I am back in Greenville. I'm not at the beach anymore, because I have to come back a couple of times a week to do some business in town while the beach is lovely. I have to come back here to Greenville a couple times a week to take Enzo to gymnastics, take Enzo to tutoring, take care of stuff here at the home front. So it is almost 4 o'clock. It's later than usual, but I wanted to try to stick to my Wednesday schedule for a Facebook Live. So today my thought process was this, is like, at what point does momming get easier? And does it ever really get easier? Because I was thinking, this is a terrible thing to say, but like, I'm at the beach with my husband and my daughter and my son, right? And you think, oh, it's the beach, how lovely. There's really no responsibility. You just hang out on the beach, or you hang out at the pool and you sleep in. What mother sleeps in anymore? We don't. I don't think we're going to sleep in again until they go to high school. But and you think, oh, it must be so relaxing. Why would anyone want to leave that and come back to town where there's a schedule and a routine and things that are imposed upon you? So I was thinking about that because the whole summer now I'm going to have to come back to Greenville for a couple of days every week to take care of my son's extracurriculars. So I was like floored because yesterday we drove home and I couldn't believe how much easier it was to drive in a car with one kid. I couldn't believe how much easier it was to run around and do errands with one kid. Now, granted, he's 6, so he's a little bit more independent. Like, it's different when it's a little baby, right? And I couldn't believe just like how much more freedom I had with one child. And so I was like, okay, so, I took him to gymnastics, and then I took him to his tutoring or whatever, came home. He was self-sufficient enough that he could sit and eat dinner by himself. And, when his sister is here, they terrorize each other, and they run around the table and they don't sit and eat. It's just crazy, right? And there's screaming and there's yelling and there's pushing and there's hitting and there's cannonballing all over the furniture and all over the house, and crying and screaming, and Enzo hit me and Zana kicked me, and and to have a quiet dinner where my son actually sat and ate his dinner and there was no fuss was beautiful, right? And then to be able to be go, you can go take a shower by yourself was bliss, right? And then to have him go to bed and be like, you know what? I don't have to sleep with the baby monitor on tonight because my daughter's not here. I just have the one, and he's older now. He's 6, right? So I don't have to sleep with the baby monitor on anymore. I can actually sleep through the night without hearing her, kick or toss or turn or whine or cry or whatever. She's 3, so she probably doesn't need the monitor anymore. But it's my husband's habit. He turns on the monitor, puts the monitor right next to my head, and all night long I hear her, doing her. Her banging her or kicking her or hitting her, whatever she's doing. So I went to bed and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to listen to that monitor tonight. And oh my gosh, I'm not going to hear her banging and coming down in the morning. Because my son, he's sufficient enough where he could come down in the morning and just turn on the TV and sit there and watch TV where I can then in effect sleep. And he can grab himself a banana, grab himself yogurt, get something to drink. He can take care of himself and do that stuff and watch television. I don't have to care for that second child. This is my one child. So I wanted him to sit and join me today for this Facebook Live. So I feel kind of, or today, I was taking him everywhere with me running errands. We even went to Chick-fil-A. I didn't have to watch him quite as diligently at Chick-fil-A because I knew that he was going to be responsible, right? Right. What? What are you going to tell him?
And I've been doing good. And I've been following orders, and I've been kind here, and cut.
It's been awesome. He'll come to me hey, Mom, you know what? I want to show you something. He made my bed. He made my bed. Or he's like, hey, Mom, I want to come show you something. He ate all of his breakfast, put all the dishes in the sink. Hey, Mom, I want to show you something. He came and he cleaned up everything out here in my living room, right? Right? And
yeah.
Hey, Mom, I brushed my teeth. I was like, okay, this never would happen if kid number 2 was here because they'd be too busy terrorizing each other, right? Right?
Yes. Oh.
What? You can tell them something.
And I said, Mom, come look in here. And she saw dinner on the plate with no food.
That's right.
On the
kitchen
counter,
right?
And no thing for my mom.
That's right. So he had ate all of his dinner. and he wasn't screaming and wanting out all sorts of things, and he wasn't like wanting all sorts of sweets and candy, and he ate every bite, put it on the counter so that I didn't, and he cleaned up all of his like table and all of his stuff, and I was like, huh, that's pretty awesome. And he knew I was kind of had a headache, so he came to check me. Mom, how do you feel? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, Mom, how do you feel? I was like, what? It was so funny. He was like sneaking around and he found stuff in the house. He did the cutest thing. He found something in the house. He found Pokemon cards that we were going to use as a reward system. I said, Enzo, why do you need to sneak around like that? And what did you say?
Because I can't take it.
He looked at me and goes, Mom, I can't help it. I get so curious. Just like that. It was the most adorable thing. Anyway, so what I'm saying is that I've had this really kind of blissful, you'd think I'd be more relaxed at the beach, but I think I'm actually more relaxed here at home with just one kid. I don't have 2 kids to chase. He's old enough and more self-sufficient. When they're not together, they're more respectful. They're just easier when they're apart, right? And
Yes.
I hadn't expected that when I was looking for baby number 2, or I was trying to have baby number 2, because I was like, oh, it'll be easier with 2. I mean, how much harder could it be with 2, right? You know, with the first one, he was like my starter kit. And once I like figured out how to work with him, hey Deborah, once I figured out how to work with him, the second kid's different, right? Because you've got your feet wet, you've got your groove on, you've got your confidence, you know how to raise kid number 2, right? But wait, let me finish. So I thought, okay, having the second kid will be so much easier. Hey Kara, it'll be so much easier to have the second kid because, you know, I've already had one. I'm more confident in myself. I know how to take care of things, and I've kind of had, you know, I've learned all the lessons, right? I know all those people that are looking at us and they're watching our video. So, boop, boop. Well, let me finish. So I thought, okay, so kid number 2 will be so much easier because I know much more now. I'm a much more confident mom now, and he can help out with her, and they'll become friends and they'll play with each other. And you know, how much more work could it be? Because like I'm cooking dinner for him. What's the big deal about just making another dinner for her, right? Or like I'm taking him somewhere. What's the big deal taking a second one along? Oh my gosh, it is crazy nuts, right? I didn't realize that with 2, it was gonna be this hard. It's hard with 2. It's really hard with 2, especially when you've got 2. And I'm sure their sibling dynamic is normal. They're 6 and 3. They're 3 years apart, and they beat on each other, and they scream at each other, and they chase each other around. And then, you know, you'll find the tender moments where they cuddle up on the couch together. It's weird, but I think that's pretty normal for a sibling dynamic. But so I'm thinking, when does it get easier? Like, okay, so is it really, I was wrong when I thought, okay, 2 would be easier. But I'm thinking, well, like if you had 3, does that make it easier? Because the third one is much older than the first one is much older than the third one. So the third one could actually, or the first one could actually be much more helpful. Or like, is it easier? Deborah, you can answer this question because you've got, you know, a ton of gorgeous children. Like, it's easier with 3? Is it easier with 4? Like, does it get easier when you get more children? And at what point is it like, okay, 3 is when it's the easiest, and 4 is okay, but when you get to 5, that's when it gets hard again? Or is it like, okay, 1 is easy peasy, but lonely, or sometimes, and then 2 is really, really rough. 3 starts to feel easier, 4 is super easy, and then 5, forget it, it's super hard. Like, I don't know, like, what's the ratio? What's the equation? Deborah, you're saying so much work. Try starting over at 6 years apart. I know, right? And I think about that, I'm like, maybe, is it easier when they're all like within a certain amount of years? Okay. Yeah, we've had fun. Now you go play with your toys because now I got to talk. This is serious business. I'm talking about the moms. Okay. So, is it easier when the kids are younger and like closer in age, or is it easier when they're farther apart because the oldest can help take care of the youngest? Or does it become more difficult because the things that you need to do with the young ones, you can no longer do with the old ones, and vice versa. So like you can't go to McDonald's play place with your 3-year-olds and your 15-year-old, right? Because the 15-year-old isn't gonna want to play in the play place, you know? Or the same token, like you can't take your 15-year-old to an adult movie because you got the littles, right? Or just like, oh my gosh, like I think about you, Deborah, all the time when you're like hauling all of those kids in those huge shopping carts just to go to Walmart is a major production. I know, Kara, I know, starting over at 6 years. I mean, like, I get it. I get it. I get it like this. So I'm really contemplating, and I kind of want to do some research, and I think maybe I'll do some reading and Googling if there's like some sort of science behind the family dynamic and how many kids you have and how their age ranges, to see like at what point does it get easier? And at what point is there a law of diminishing returns? And at what point does it just get harder? So is it like a bell curve? Does it start out really hard, get a little bit easier, and then it gets super hard again? You know, or maybe it's just the ages that our kids are at right now. Like, everyone says that, like, you think that you're in the hardest stage right now, but you have no idea how much harder it's gonna get. And I get that, because I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, there were days where I'm like, it can't get any worse than this. But then I think, okay, when they get older and they're in high school and I need help with high school homework and I have to like take them to high school sports and deal with all sorts of social pressures that and adult topics that I don't need to deal with right now. Or is it harder with the diapers and harder with the breastfeeding and harder with the teething? Like, I think every stage of raising a child is hard, but like, what's the hardest stage? Like, so far I've only had stages 1 through 6, ages 1 through 6. So I think that like my hardest stage was probably with my first one, because I had no idea what I was doing and I was all alone and like I was doing it all for the first time. So, and I was breastfeeding, and that was so hard. I think breastfeeding was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because it expended so much energy and I slept so little, right? So I'm thinking like, I think that was probably one of the hardest parts of parenting, was that first year when you're breastfeeding, right? But then, and all the lack of sleep and just like no confidence in your own abilities. And then like I thought, okay, once that's passed, how much harder can it get? Well, then they start walking, and then they start breaking things, and then they start busting their teeth, right? And then they start having to go to the doctor, and they start getting ear infections, and please stop. They start getting ear infections, and they start, you know, getting urinary tract infections, and they start, you know, like everything else just seems to get magnified, right? So then, like, is it super hard when they're 1, and you know, and it gets harder and harder and harder, and then it starts to get easy again, and then when they're teenagers, it gets really hard again, and it's hard in different ways. Like, I feel like the young years are physically really challenging on a mom, because it's a lot of chasing, it's a lot of running, it's a lot of like being hyper vigilant and helicoptery to make sure that they're safe. And then when they get older, it's kind of more emotionally challenging, I'm assuming, because you're dealing with puberty and you're dealing with, I don't like you anymore, mom, and the whole like, they don't need you as much, or they think they don't need you as much, and they don't think you know anything, and they're teenagers, like they're just mean, right? Or they are just going through the change, and so like, and so much could go wrong with your teen if you're not parenting or giving the right advice, or all that kind of stuff. When I just think about teen pregnancy, I think about drugs, I think about suicide, I think about all those things that could happen as a teen, right? As parents, you really got to be careful about that. You don't need to be careful about that stuff when your kid's a baby, right? So I'm thinking, okay, I think it's hard now, but is it going to be so much harder? Hey, Jenny Smith, how are you? Elise, hi. Like, it's going to be so much harder, and like, am I going to survive it? So I think I'm going to say this now, and maybe in like 10 years when my kid's 16, I'll do another one of these and go, oh, I was so wrong. I'm thinking right now that the baby years are super physically demanding. And then the teenage years are extremely emotionally demanding on a parent. But I think that both stages or ages are going to have difficulties of different kinds, but I don't think it's ever really going to get easier. It's just going to get different. So I would love to get the opinions of some of the moms that are out there that might have older kids. You know, I had my kids super late in my life. I had my first kid when I was 37. And so and you know, my daughter, I was 40. So I'm like, you know, maybe it's just me being old and tired, or maybe it's just because I'm tired because I'm trying to figure out, is it really as hard as I think it is? Is it really going to get much harder? And how can I brace myself, or can I even brace myself for it? Can you be prepared for it? Like, or do you just have to ride the wave and figure it out as you go along? Because I think that's what momming is all about. Like, 'cause every kid is so different. There is no rule book. And I feel like it's never going to get easier. It's just going to get different. And then after high school, you're going to want them back so bad. My son keeps jumping all over this table and knocking the camera, so I'm sorry for the shaky camera thing. So I would love to hear your thoughts and your opinions on, like, does it ever really get easier, and when does it get easier? If it gets easier. Or are there periods where it's easier than, you know what I mean? Like, sure, it's never going to always be super easy, but is there a window where, like, oh, when they're 3 to 4, it's super easy. When they're like 8 to 9, it's super easy. And why? Can you please stop banging on the table? Because I keep seeing my head shake all over this camera. So yeah, I don't know. I would love to know your thoughts. I would never change any of this for the world. I love my kids as crazy and as messy. I say that as my kid just shot a whole bunch of cars across the table. I say that with love because I do love them so much and I wouldn't change anything in the world. But there are those days, and you know those days. You've had those days where your Starbucks cup is not full of Starbucks. Those days where like you can fight back the tears. You're trying to fight them back. And there's days where like no amount of Tylenol is going to make your headache go away. There's those days where you want to like lock yourself in a room for a while. And what I mean by a while is not 5 minutes, but like forever. You know, so there are really bad days, but then there are also really beautiful days too. So I guess that we just have to like take the good with the bad and realize that we're just gonna have to ride the wave and know that as hard as we think it is now, when they're gone, we're gonna want it all back. Isn't that the sick part about all of this? As my kid who now is like got all these crazy teeth, kind of looks like Opie from the Andy Griffith Show. Yeah, that's him. So think about that, and I try to like reel myself in when all this is going on and go, you know what, as suckville as it is or it may feel in the moment, you're gonna miss this so much at some point in your life. So try to squeeze the last ounces of good out of it. Remember the last drips and drops, the goods and the bads, because you're gonna want it back someday. Everyone always tells you that, like, oh, the moments are so fleeting, you're gonna want this all back someday. And you say to yourself when you're in Shitsville, no, I don't want this back anymore, but we're gonna want it back. And I don't know what I'm gonna do when I get to that point in my life, because I think I'm gonna regret some of the things I may have complained about.
Once I finish St. Peter's, I'm gonna be going to 8th grade and other grades, but then when I'm all done with all of my other stuff, I'm gonna go to college.
College. What are you gonna be? Are you gonna be a Jedi, or are you gonna be? Yesterday you wanted to be a Jedi. I gotta tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this story, and then I'm gonna go because I thought it was the funniest thing ever. We were walking on the beach, him and I, and we walk for like miles. And there's these houses on the beach, and one of the houses has solar panels on the roof of the house to create energy, clean energy. And this was like days ago, right? So we're driving back from the beach yesterday, and he said, "Mom, I need to ask you a question. I want to talk more about those." What did you call them? Shadow pants. I want to start talking about those shadow pants. I'm like, honey, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know anything about shadow pants, so I don't know what a shadow pant is. So can you give me a little bit more? Like, what's a shadow pant? He's like, Mom, the shadow pants. I'm like, I really don't know what you're talking about. Is that a movie? Is that a toy? Is it something? I'm like, shadow pants, right? And so he's like, Mom, the stuff that we saw on the roofs of those houses when we were going for the walk. And I look at him and I go, you mean solar panels? I mean, like, he was having a full-on fit because I didn't know what he was talking about when he was saying shadow pants. So the next time you see a solar panel anywhere, you can think of my son, who is convinced that they're called shadow pants. Again, that's one of those moments that I want to write in my little book and remember forever and ever. But there's a lot of memories that I'd want to kind of forget too, right? So gotta take the good with the bad. Gotta do a balance. So I got to figure that balance out. So please help me figure out that balance. And if you got any advice for me, I'd love to take it. Or maybe you feel the same way I do. I don't know. Give me some of your thoughts. Give me some thumbs up, some likes, and give me a little information. Share some of your experiences with me. And please share this stuff with your friends or, or whatever. I would love to have some more people in my village. And Friday, we're doing another wine tasting. It's going to be wine and hummus. And I know that sounds funny, but there's going to, who cares about hummus? We're going to try like 4 different flavors of hummus. We're going to do like black bean hummus, traditional hummus, avocado hummus, and get this, kids, chocolate hummus. I'll put a recipe in my next post about how you can make your own chocolate hummus, or you can even buy it at your local restaurant. So please join me for wine and hummus on our Friday night wine tasting. Otherwise, love you all very much. Have a fabulous Wednesday, and we will talk to you soon. Hang in there, moms. Momming's rough. Remember every moment, because we're going to miss it someday. Love you much. Have a good day, guys.